Hello, everyone. So this is the final reading from my book, Hypnotherapy Revealed, an introduction to hypnotherapy. Obviously, there's a link in the description, and there is you can just go to my website and find the book as a paperback or an ebook if you want to go through it for yourself. I'll probably yawn at the beginning of this a bit, as I always seem to when I'm in front of the camera. If you find this interesting or helpful, feel free to give it a thumbs up. And obviously, if you're not already subscribed and you find it interesting and you want to keep up with other stuff I do, feel free to subscribe. So today is about self-hypnosis and structured inductions, which means that after I've done a bit of the introductory stuff that I have to read about self-hypnosis before getting onto the inductions, I will be then reading inductions, and you can either listen along and don't follow along, or you can follow along. But if you follow along to them, make sure your attention isn't required elsewhere. Make sure you're not, you don't have cooking on, or you don't have anything else you need to be paying any attention to, or what have you, that you can just literally pay this your full attention. And once I finish each induction, I can't remember how I've worded it in here. I probably have just done the inductions and not any counting outy bits. Let's have a look. I'm just flicking to the end of an induction so I can see. Yep, so I will probably give you a few moments silence and then kind of count you out. Obviously, as any of you who know me, normally I don't want to count out people from inductions. What I do is let people come out kind of in their own time. So bit of a yawn. So I always try to make it so that coming out of hypnosis is something that the client is under control of, not something that I'm in control of. So I don't want to be saying to people, okay, 3, 2, 1, back to the room, or 1, 2, 3, back to the room, whatever I choose to do. I don't want to do that normally, because that brings people out when they might be thinking, I'm not yet ready to exit hypnosis. But given that I'm reading a book, and so I have to move on from each induction, I will kind of probably do 1, 2, 3, and open your eyes and kind of bring you back out, and then I'll move on to the next induction, which means it will probably end up working a bit like fractionation. So I don't know if I mentioned fractionation. I might have done earlier in the book. I can't remember. Fractionation is where you guide someone into hypnosis and out of hypnosis multiple times. And every time someone goes into hypnosis and comes out of hypnosis, they find it easier to go the next time. So the process is more familiar to them. So they just keep sort of going in, then they come out. And decades ago, hypnotists realized that I'll get all the yawning out of the way while I'm talking here. Hypnotists realized that every time a client would sit back down in front of them and they said, right, so it's time for the hypnosis. Okay, so just take a moment to close your eyes. And the person would be already kind of zonked out, because they're so used to responding to the hypnotist's voice that it doesn't take them any effort at all, because they already know what they need to do and how they need to respond. And so, and hypnotists realize that this gets more powerful the more time someone is hypnotized. And so obviously it ended up being tested. Well, could you just do all of that rather than, so I think there's an article by Milton Erickson where he says, you just reach a point where you think, well, if when you've hypnotized someone, say 40 times, the 40th time they're responding incredibly, why don't you just hypnotize them rather than 40 weeks worth of, once a week you've hypnotized them? Why don't you just hypnotize them 40 times in one session so that you get them to that place much earlier? So that's kind of what happens with fractionation, that someone spends so much time going in and out that they just get better and better at responding in that way and going in and out of hypnosis. And that's also a good way, obviously, for practicing self-hypnosis, that if I'm teaching a client self-hypnosis, and anyone who's taken my self-hypnosis course will know this already. But if you're teaching someone self-hypnosis, it's good to pick a really simple induction that you can guide the person through in the session. And then you say to them, okay, now you do it kind of in front of me here. And then the person does it to themselves. But then you've literally, say in 1-2 hour session, had them going in and out of hypnosis maybe 30 or 40 times with the same induction. So they get very used to initially responding to you and then rehearsing and practicing responding. And then they do it to themselves while you're just reinforcing. So as you see them, so for example, if you do, okay, I want you just in your mind to count from 3, 2, 1 and close your eyes. And I just want you to do that in your mind. And you see the person do that in their mind and you watch as their eyes flicker and they kind of go in, and then you just reinforce it by being able to say, that's it, just going with that. So you're just offering reinforcing comments. And then the third stage is, so you did it with them, then they did it to themselves with you reinforcing it, and then they do it to themselves where you don't have to say or do it. And they're obviously capable of leaving the session and just doing that for themselves in the future at any point that they want to do self-hypnosis. So it's a very, fractionation is very helpful to do. Setting. So let me have some water and then I will crack on. And I apologize for any yawning. I worked out literally just about an hour ago that doing all these live streams means that I'm adding an extra 21 hours or something of work to my week for kind of being here doing this. So that's 21 hours less in front of a TV or dozing or whatever I do. Don't say 3, 1 again. You made me close my eyes. Okay, I'll try not to say that, except it does crop up in this chapter a few times, I think, in different contexts. So, self-hypnosis and structured inductions. What is self-hypnosis? Self-hypnosis is useful for a number of reasons. Many other books written about psychological problems ignore hypnosis despite knowing that hypnosis increases effectiveness of psychological therapies, and psychological problems are essentially faulty pattern matching. And as mentioned earlier in the book, hypnosis is the process of updating neurological patterns. Regardless of the therapy, when a client eventually changes and no longer has their problem, they've updated their neurology. Case whether the person was in therapy for 1 session or 25 years. This is the advantage of hypnosis, because you can help the client to enter that state from the first session in a controlled way, rather than having them enter a trance state in an uncontrolled way. People enter trance every 90 minutes or so, continuously, both day and night, to update patterns in the brain automatically during their basic rest and activity cycle, which is one of our ultradian rhythms. Self-hypnosis is the process of the client themselves using a process to communicate with their own mind-body. This could be using a technique, or it could be using their natural rhythms, like the basic rest and activity cycle. Often, people try to rush things in hypnosis. It's important to remember that things often take much longer to develop in hypnosis than expected. A therapist can ask for an arm levitation and assume it hasn't worked. Yet 20 minutes later, the arm raises all by itself. Milton Erickson used to say that he would ask his unconscious to do something and give it a realistic time limit, and then carry on with his day, trusting that when his unconscious is able to do it, it will complete what was requested. So he would tell himself what he wanted to achieve, like being pain-free, and discover later that the pain had vanished. So giving time is vital, and not expecting everything will happen instantly. With self-hypnosis, it's possible to train yourself to accelerate healing, reduce pain, undo habits and addictions like smoking and drinking, reduce stress, increase well-being. As well as addressing problems, you can also use self-hypnosis for personal enhancement. So it could be to improve your memory or to increase a skill. With regular use, it can be helpful to enhance and access your inner potential. I record many personalized self-hypnosis tracks, both for others and for myself. I'll share the secrets of how I make mine because I don't think I do this in the same way as other hypnotherapists do. I don't write out a script and then recite the script. I don't have a learned set induction in my mind. I sit down with a microphone and hallucinate the person I'm making the track for sitting in front of me in a chair. I then hypnotize that hallucinated person, commenting on what I see and hear them doing. I do this because then my tracks have a natural feel to them, because they're made as if I was hypnotizing and working with the client rather than a piece of paper. If I see a hallucinated person move or take a deep breath, I comment on this. This has sometimes freaked people out, as they suddenly do as I observed, and I then comment on this, and they think I'm in the room with them, even though they're just listening to a track. When I make general tracks for multiple listeners, I imagine a general client, and again, I respond to that client, but I do what I can to not mismatch what the listener may experience. So I use more nominalizations, which are vague words and terms. So I don't say, you can walk down that sandy beach, unless I know they'll be experiencing a sandy beach. I just say, you can find yourself walking on that beach. And I wonder what the ground feels like beneath your feet. I then guide the client's attention to what the ground feels like, looks like, what each footstep sounds like, and let them create the environment which is right for them. I'm just guiding their attention to notice the different aspects of their experience. Remember, when making self-hypnosis tracks, to leave plenty of pauses and silence to give time for people to process the content and to allow people to become more absorbed in the experience and develop the experience. Therapy isn't just what happens in a therapy session, it's also what the client does outside the session. If the client goes back to their normal life and carries on doing what they've always done, they're always going to continue to get what they've always got. If you can encourage someone to take up self hypnosis and practice it outside of sessions, then they'll be learning a skill that will allow them to better manage emotions, mind. And they're also demonstrating motivation and commitment to change. The self hypnosis will also help them to continue the therapeutic work carried out in the session. The client can also learn to be in control of their own mind. Hypnosis has always been controversial and misunderstood. Most people don't realize that everyone is already in a trance. The question is not whether people are in a trance or not. The question is what trance and how deep. Most therapists don't realize that they continually hypnotize people during therapy sessions, whether they mean to or not. If a therapist asks a client to think back to a specific event, the client has to go into a light trance to do that. Many therapists do bad hypnosis. Not on purpose, they often just don't realize the effects that they're having on people. Often these therapists would scoff at the idea that they do hypnosis. When a therapist asks clients to think about negative events repeatedly and to talk about these events, the client will be deepening their trance around those thoughts and will be strengthening the patterns for the problem. So when they do this to themselves in everyday life through worrying, they're doing a form of negative self-hypnosis. Many therapists and doctors inadvertently make clients and patients worse by giving bad suggestions without realizing their clients or patients are in a receptive trance state. That's one of the reasons why it's useful to learn self-hypnosis and teach it to clients. If they know self-hypnosis, they can have control over their own brain. If someone then tries to do bad hypnosis on them, they can concentrate on what they need to focus on instead and reprogram their own mind how they want it. They'll also be able to increase the speed with which they can heal themselves. This happens even from doing something as simple as being able to relax. Setting clients the task of practicing self-hypnosis can give them something practical to do, which in turn can help clients to feel that they're a part of their change, rather than the change being something expected to just happen to them. It can give clients something helpful to focus their mind on, rather than focusing on the problem. With self-hypnosis, the client can create and use powerful self-help techniques. They can use anchoring on themselves. They can manipulate submodalities, the inner representations of experience like color, shade, texture, pitch, volume, and create submodality based self help techniques. For example, for pain control, they can get a sense of what the pain would look like, what size it would be, what color, what shape, what texture, and then explore what happens when they change the texture, size, color, or shape. Well, they can imagine a bright white light and imagine that surrounding the pain and then shrinking down around the pain until the pain is shrunk down within the white light. And once the light's the size of a pea, they can notice it moving around to different locations, then moving to a location out in front of themselves, where it falls to the floor and rolls away, taking the pain with it. These types of submodality techniques can be created and used for a wide range of problems. They can use motor self-hypnosis, self-help techniques using a pendulum and asking questions of the unconscious and letting it communicate through the pendulum. Or they can use finger signaling or hand movements to communicate work being done. Another powerful technique is to allow non-conscious communication to become conscious via a blackboard or whiteboard or screen in the mind, where the client asks if the unconscious is there and ready to communicate. And if it is, can it write yes? Then thanking the unconscious after each response. Then help with the problem and asking whether it can give any understanding on the problem, or whether it can draw up all aspects of the problem to be addressed and can address the problem and let them know when the work is done. There are many different approaches to self-hypnosis. People can learn structured inductions. They use induction processes which are easy to follow, or have something audio recorded to follow, which could be me flowing. Or they could just simply tell themselves what they would like to happen and just carry on with their day. Structured inductions are a great way to practice hypnosis when starting out, and great for people learning self-hypnosis. By using a structured induction for self-hypnosis, you can become familiar with the approach and increase responsivity. When someone begins to know what is coming next, they begin to respond to the learned pattern more instinctively without having to put in effort to try to respond. The first induction I'll describe here is the body scan induction. This is a simple induction to learn and do. The process is easy to remember, which makes it great for self-hypnosis. It's also a common induction for hypnotherapists to use. The process is to have the client get comfortable, either sitting or lying down. Then they take some time to slowly and methodically focus through their body, from the top of their head to the tips of their toes. This narrows their attention inwardly on their ongoing experience. It's best to move to the next step of focus with an out breath. The induction can be done feet up and is often taught feet up, but I feel that doing the induction head down feels more natural. It focuses on going deeper, heading down, and when you breathe out, your chest, body, and head moves downwards. So I feel this all makes doing it this way more congruent with what's naturally happening during the induction, rather than working up the body while the head, chest, and body is relaxing down with each breath. Here's an example of wording which could be used if this induction is being spoken to a client or audio recorded. If a client's using the induction themselves, just guiding themselves through it with their eyes closed, then they may not use any words, just follow the process of slowly focusing on different body areas. In this example, I add in the idea of a healing light as something visual, which can help with absorption. Most of focusing on the body is kinesthetic. It helps to be able as possible to absorb attention. Have some water. So take a few moments to close your eyes and focus on the top of your head. Notice how it feels and what sensations you have. Allow your attention to drift down to your neck. Notice how a little more relaxation can drift in with each breath that you take, and how the muscles can soften as you allow your attention to flow through each part of your body. As you now focus on the tops of your arms, And I wonder which arm the relaxation will spread down first, the right arm or the left arm. And as that relaxation continues to flow down the arms, you can notice how each breath draws in something new and expels what your mind and body doesn't need. And as you focus on those hands, focusing on what they're resting on, noticing which hand is the heaviest and which is the lightest, being aware of different sensations and feelings, of which hand is warmest and coolest. As you allow that wave of relaxation to spread down your chest towards your stomach, like a healing light cleansing your mind and body, filling your heart and lungs, helping that healing light to spread around your whole body and mind. As that relaxation flows down into your stomach, that's it, relaxing deeper and deeper and more fully as a body, while the mind becomes, as you allow your attention to drift down into the legs. And I wonder which leg the relaxation will spread fastest into. As that relaxation drifts all the way down into the feet, you can be curious how the mind will follow. Once the body is fully relaxed. And now, as a mind, begin to get a sense of entering into your mind and flowing gently around the body, checking that each muscle is comfortably relaxed. Have a sense of drifting through the head, down into the shoulders, down into the neck. And now, as I remain quiet for a few moments, you can take as long as you need to drift through your body, filling the body with a healing light. And when I start talking again, you'll have finished and you can get a sense of being in the most wonderfully comfortable chair as you drift through the body. Now, that's it. Finding yourself in that chair, feeling so comfortable. That's it, all the way. And then in a moment, I'll count you out of this and we can continue. 1, 2, 3. Opening your eyes and coming back to the room. That's 1 down. You have a few more to go. And obviously that was only a quick, short script. You can take as long as you like. So one good thing with the body scan induction, there's one of my body scan induction videos I think is like 45 or 50 minutes long, where I kind of drag it out for 45 or 50 minutes. So you can do it quite quickly, especially if someone's very experienced at just following along and going into hypnosis quickly. Or if someone really wants kind of, or feels that what works best for them is a long, deep kind of process, then you can take time to, really slow down everything you do. Slow down, kind of focusing on the top of the head, focusing on the ears, focusing around the eyes, focusing on the forehead, focusing around the cheeks, focusing um, around the mouth, etc., etc., and then really slowly going through the body, and then maybe afterwards doing, um, say, the healing light, and then maybe doing um, like a mental scan through the body, kind of healing areas or something like that. Just something that keeps you focusing inwardly. So the three things induction is an incredibly simple induction to do. It's great for self-hypnosis and for teaching to clients due to its simplicity. The idea of the induction is for the client to find something to look at, which is ideally a little bit above eye level. Then notice three things they can see, three things they can hear, and three things they can feel. Then they can close their eyes, imagine the scene in their mind's eye, and do the same. Notice three things they can see, three things they can hear, and three things they can feel. After they've done this, they open their eyes again, looking back at the spot, and can repeat the process, observing three things they can see, three things they can hear, three things they can feel. They do this all very slowly and methodically, taking their time. The induction involves something called fractionation, which is the process of having someone enter and exit hypnosis repeatedly to deepen the state. They're also focusing on details, externally and internally, and holding their attention. The client repeats this process until they find it difficult to open their eyes, and often at this point, they also find it difficult to speak and would rather just relax into hypnosis. Clients can be hypnotized with the induction each session and perhaps a few times during the session so that they can learn how to instinctively follow the process. Then they can perhaps do the induction on their own with the therapist watching to see that they can do it fine, so that they can then hypnotize themselves with the induction, having practiced in the session. The induction can also be recorded for the client to listen to, or the client can just use the very simple structure to do the induction for themselves. And so that's the induction we're about to do now. And with this induction, if you've got a client in the room, you would often, and even if you do it yourself, you can just say things out loud. So you can say, I can see whatever you can see. I can see this, I can see this, I can hear this, I can hear this, I can hear this, I can feel this, I can feel this. You can say it out loud. But obviously, if you're at home, you can just do it in your own mind. You don't have to say it out loud. And it doesn't matter. It's good if you can find different things to focus on, but it doesn't matter if you end up saying the same things if you can't think of anything else to say. And with your eyes closed, it might be that you can't see much other than maybe black or the occasional flash of light or the occasional color or something. So it's not like you're after incredibly detailed information. It's about focusing the attention on what is there and what the lived experience is, not on kind of somehow having an incredible imagination or anything like that. But yeah, I do have a body scan, a specific body scan video that is, I think, 45 minutes long. That's on my channel. I think someone commented on it recently. And there is the deep trance track as well. And there's a few others as well. There's a few that have got body scans in them. You're going deeper because you keep going in and out of hypnosis. Well, you'll experience it, hopefully, in a minute. So take a moment to allow those eyes to settle on looking at something in front of you and above eye level. So you want to keep your head facing forward and be looking up, not tilting your head to look up. And each time your eyes close, you can drift deeper into a comfortable hypnotic state. So just allow your eyes to find something in front of you just above eye level to look at. And as you look at that, I'd like to have you hold your focus on that spot. And begin to say to yourself 3 things that you can see And just say that to yourself slowly. For example, I can see the light. I can see a box. And now, slowly, say three things that you can hear. That's it. And now, slowly and comfortably, say three things that you can feel. That's it. And now, just gently allow those eyes to close and get a sense of that external scene inside your mind. And take three deep breaths as you just drift deeper into the experience. And then slowly say three things that you can see in your mind. That's it. And now say three things that you can hear. That's it. Now, three things that you can feel. That's it. And now, while you remain as still as you can, allow the eyes to open and look back at that spot. And then, while looking at that spot, say three things that you can see. It may be the same things, it may be different things. That's it. And now, three things that you can hear. And three things that you can feel. That's it. And now allow the eyes to close again and just drift deep inside, getting a sense of that external scene inside your mind again. That's it. And just say to yourself three things you can see in your mind. And three things you can hear. And three things that you can feel. That's it. Each time going deeper and deeper into the experience. And each time finding it harder to open the eyes. And as you continue to relax, just allow the eyes to open and look back at that spot. And then when you look at that spot, just say three things that you can see. And three things that you can hear. And three things that you can feel. That's it. And then allow your eyes to close again and get a sense of that external scene inside your mind. And as you take three comfortable breaths and allow the muscles around the eyes and the face to relax and allow that relaxation to spread through your body in your own unique way. You may find it a bit more difficult to say three things you can see, three things you can hear, and three things you can feel. But try really hard to say three things you can see, hear, and feel. And if it seems too much effort at this point, you can just allow yourself to relax and drift deeper inside. And you can take a moment to look back at that spot and say three things you can see. And then three things you can hear. And then three things that you can feel. And then taking a moment to drift inside again. And letting those eyes close again. That's it. And seeing it before. And as you drift deeper into the experience, just get a sense of walking over to the chair, relaxing down in that chair, having a sense of feeling so relaxed. You just close your eyes and drift deeply and comfortably into hypnosis. That's it. And then on the count of three, you can drift back and come back to the room and open your eyes. One, two, three. Opening your eyes and coming back to the room. So the constant going inside just takes you deeper and deeper every time you do it. Obviously, your attention is focused. There's an induction which isn't in this book. It is in the book that I'm currently writing, or I'm pretty sure it's not in this book. That's a blinking induction. And the idea of the blinking induction is that you just literally, every time someone blinks, you just say, that's it. And that's all you have to do. And people go so deeply, so quickly. They don't know why it happens. From a subject point of view, they don't know why it happens. Because they just see you saying that's it. They don't realize that they've blinked. But you just say that's it every time you blink, and they just end up stopping blinking and keeping their eyes closed. So if that didn't work, the next one might not work with you either. But I find these incredibly powerful inductions. They're some of my favorite. If I'm going to use a structured induction, they're some of my favorites, which is obviously why I use them on some of my videos on YouTube, because they're so quick at getting most people in, sort of to go inside it. And if someone engages with it, then obviously it ends up working for most people. I've not yet encountered someone face to face where they make it beyond like 2 or 3 minutes of doing one of these inductions before they just I normally try and push my luck and see on their face that they're thinking, don't make me open my eyes and come back out again. I'm really struggling to open my eyes now. And I then make them open their eyes, even though I know it really frustrates them, because them being frustrated and desperately fighting to open their eyes obviously is even more of a convincer that now when I let them have that, it kind of increases that tension, so that when you then offer them the release of that tension, where you say, that's it, now just go even deeper all on your own kind of thing, they're so happy that they can finally just let go and go inside and not have to keep opening their eyes, not having to keep talking and all the rest of it, that they then go even deeper rapidly, because you've just freed them from this constant, I've got to open my eyes again. I'm really struggling. It was a nightmare to open my eyes that time. So it's the next one is probably more of my favorite than that one is. I've never experienced someone, well, obviously my view on someone going deep enough is, are they responding? So it's not ever about relaxation for me. It's, are they responding? And if they're not responding, then I want to try and do what I can to help them respond. But there's no reason why you couldn't do that at any point during a session. Or the next one, which is the eyes open, eyes closed induction. The eyes open, eyes closed induction is one of my favorite structured inductions. It's so easy to teach to clients and have them practice in the session, initially with the therapist. And then the therapist can watch the client guiding themselves through the process in the session. It's so quick, it can be done dozens of times during the session to make sure the client is adept at doing the induction for themselves before the end of the session. The induction is similar to the three things induction, but instead of the client saying things that they observe, all they're doing is opening their eyes on the count of 3 and then closing their eyes on the count of 3. It sounds really simple and like it shouldn't do anything, but it's very effective induction. It works using the idea of fractionation, like the last one, and linking or anchoring entering hypnosis with counting down and exiting hypnosis with counting up. Once this anchor is in place, all the client has to do is count down from 3 to 1 in the voice they were using during the induction, or imagining the thing down, and they'll enter hypnosis, then counting up, or hear the counting up in the therapist's voice, to exit hypnosis. To make the induction as effective as possible, it helps for the client to find something to look at which is above eye level. Also for the therapist, or the client themselves when they're doing this to themselves, to count up and down slowly and with the client's out breaths. When counting lower tonality with each count down and raised tonality with each count up. Between counting down, give suggestions for going deeper and relaxing, and suggest they pay as much attention as possible to the spot they look at, and suggest that the eyelids can get heavier and harder to open each time they try. It helps to frustrate the response by going to reach one but pausing a bit sometimes, so that the client's eyes flicker where they want to close them but haven't been given permission. Pause for longer periods of time when the client has their eyes closed, and have them try to open their eyes one or two more times than they would have liked, where it's evident that they're really struggling to open their eyes. When the client is doing this for themselves, they'll be counting to themselves and challenging themselves to open their eyes where they're really struggling to do so. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to find a spot in front of you, just above eye level, to gaze at, while keeping it as still as possible. And while you do this, your body can continue to relax in its own way. And so as you look at that spot without blinking, I'm going to count down from 3 to 1. And on the count of 1, the eyes can close and you can drift even deeper into that comfortable hypnotic state. And whenever I count from 1 to 3, your eyes can open and look back at that spot. And each time I count from 3 to 1, your eyes can close and you can drift deeper into that hypnotic state. And each time you do, you can begin to learn how you can do this for yourself in the future in situations that are safe and appropriate, just by hearing the sound of my voice in your mind, counting down from 3 to 1, to go deeply into hypnosis. And to come back out of hypnosis, you can hear the sound of my voice in your mind, counting from 1, 2, 3. So now just allow your eyes to look over at a spot just above eye level. That's it. Really focusing on that spot. Focus intensely on taking in as much information as possible. Making sounds crisper and clearer. Making everything about that spot sharply in focus. Noticing colour, texture, contrast. Really paying close attention, focusing all of your attention on that spot. And on the count of 1, you can relax that attention and close your eyes. 3, 2, 1. Closing your eyes. That's it. As you relax deeper and deeper, becoming more comfortable and relaxed. And with your eyes closed, the muscles around the eyes can relax. The muscles in the face can relax. And you can relax deeper and deeper and begin to drift off to a pleasant thought or place in your mind. That's it. And 1, 2, 3, opening your eyes and really focusing all of your attention on that spot. Becoming very aware of what you can see, what you can hear, what you can feel. That's it. 3, 2, 1. Going all the way, closing your eyes deeper and deeper. Drifting inside to that pleasant thought or place in your mind. Going deeper and deeper as the muscles continue to relax more fully. And the muscles around the eyes can continue to feel more comfortable, remaining in a relaxed state as you drift deeper and deeper inside. That's it. And 1, 2, 3. Opening your eyes and looking back at that spot, paying it all of your attention, really trying to keep those eyes open and locked on that spot. And 3, 2, 1. Closing those eyes and relaxing deeper and deeper into that pleasant experience. That's it, all the way, in your own unique way. That's it. That's it. Finding it harder to open your eyes each count. And 1, 2, 3. Trying to focus all of your attention back on that spot. And 3, 2, 1. Going all the way. That's right. Closing those eyes. Drifting deeper and deeper. And as you drift even deeper, still into that experience, and whilst you drift deeper into that experience, my voice can continue to go with you as we journey together deeper into the experience. And you can begin to get a sense of a chair that appears so comfortable and familiar, yet you know you've never seen it before. And when you're ready, you can get a sense of relaxing down into that chair, feeling so safe, so comfortable, so relaxed. You drift off into a deep, comfortable hypnosis. That's it, all the way. And then 1, 2, 3, opening your eyes and coming back to the room. So that's obviously a very similar induction to the previous one, except that it's not got the additional components for helping to focus attention that the one before it has. The one before it's also very similar to the 3 things induction is very similar to a cognitive behavioral therapy technique that's often done with people. So the next induction will be the staircase induction. So the staircase induction is another induction which is great for self-hypnosis due to the simplicity of the process. All you're doing is guiding a client, or the client is guiding themselves as they walk down stairs. I personally prefer not to count each step, but instead say that on a specific count, the client will be at the bottom of the stairs. If the counting is tied to the steps, what can happen is that people can feel like their foot is hanging in the air when they want to step on the next step. But you haven't done the count for the next step yet, so they don't feel that they can step yet, and this can frustrate or annoy them. Yet if you count too fast, they don't have time to develop a relaxed and focused state. Whereas if you say that you'll count down from 20, and on the count of 1, they'll be at the bottom of the stairs, then they can walk down any number of stairs. They can walk at the speed which is comfortable for them, and they'll find themselves at the bottom when the counting finishes. You can phrase that they will go 1/20th of the way deeper into hypnosis with each count if using 20 numbers, or 1/10 if using 10 numbers. Between numbers, you can say deeper and deeper, and other comments, such as focusing the client's attention on aspects of their inner experience, what the handrail feels like, what each step feels like, and the sounds like, what the walls look like, etc. You can alter the rate of counting, perhaps sometimes counting faster, but keeping it so that each count down is in time with an out breath. I personally like setting a scene for the steps to be in, rather than just saying, close your eyes and imagine you're standing at the top of a staircase. I may have a client imagine walking through a field towards a grand oak tree, standing in the middle of the field as they walk. Uh, the therapist can guide the client's attention to different sensory elements of the experience, like the sound of the footsteps, what the sky looks like, what the field looks like, what each step feels like, perhaps what a breeze on the skin or warmth of the sun on the skin feels like. Then the feeling at the oak tree of running their fingers over the bark of the tree before finding a door in the tree, opening the door and finding a staircase. If the client is doing this for self hypnosis, they can be taught to be aware of all these things and have it explained to them about how the more sensory detail they bring into the experience, the more effective this will be and the deeper they'll go. Following walking down the staircase, they could perhaps see a door and enter the door to continue their experience and do any inner processing after passing through that door. Let's just see. Hypno drunk. I have a track about doing that. Um, I'm just about to do the staircase induction, but I thought just before I do it, I best just see what people's comments are. Yeah, the first one's better for people who get easily distracted because it keeps giving you stuff to focus on. Um, so the three things one. Um, yes, well, I expect you to be quiet while your eyes are shut because you can't type so easily with your eyes closed. So, as you listen to me, I'll talk to you. And as I talk to you, your mind can wander. And while your mind wanders, you can begin to think about different feelings while you begin to drift deeper inside. And you can have a sense of noticing a grand oak tree. And you can be curious about the tree as you begin to walk towards it. And as you walk closer and closer to the tree, you can notice the secret door in the base of the tree. And you can walk to the door and gently open it to reveal a grand and wonderful staircase. And in a moment, you can begin to walk comfortably down the staircase, one step at a time, as I count from 20 to 1. And with each count, you can go 1/20th of the way deeper into hypnosis. As you step on the top step, 20. That's it, deeper and deeper. As you notice what's around you, and I wonder what you can see. And I wonder what each step you take sounds like, and what it feels like to take each step deeper and deeper into hypnosis, relaxing into the experience. 19. Deeper and deeper in your own unique way. And I wonder whether you'll take a step with each count or two steps with each count at a time. And at other times, pause for thought or to relax a little deeper, or just look around or to stop a moment and take in the experience. 18. going deeper and deeper, knowing you can take yourself down this into a state anytime you please, just by finding that tree, walking through the door and walking down the steps. 17, going deeper and deeper with each count. 1/20th of the way into hypnosis with each number. 16, 15, 14. That's it, all the way. And I don't know whether you'll go even deeper with the words that I say or the spaces between my words. 13, 12, 11, deeper and deeper. 10, 9, over halfway now into a deep and comfortable hypnotic state. 8, all the way. 7, deeper and deeper. 6. And as you approach the bottom of the stairs, I wonder whether you'll become curious about what you'll discover. 5, as you shortly notice a door down there. 4, all the way into hypnosis. 3, as you approach that bottom step. 2, 1, deeply and comfortably in hypnosis now. As you push that door open and see a familiar looking room you know you've never seen before, and wonder where that chair in the room will lead you. And you can go and sit in that chair and drift deeply inside, getting a sense of finding that chair so comforting, so relaxing. Your eyes relax, shut, and you get a sense of drifting off into a pleasant dream. That's it. And then after a few moments, you can exit hypnosis on 1, 2, 3, opening your eyes and coming back to the room. So the next induction, I don't think I guide you through it. It's just me telling you about it. You have to wait for book 3 to be guided through it. So the rabbit hole induction can be similar to how I do the staircase induction. Sometimes, instead of a slow, relaxing walk down a staircase or a slow walk down a rabbit hole, I have the person find a rabbit hole under a tree and fall down the rabbit hole. I explain they feel comfortable and know the experience is safe and that it will teach them something. I talk about falling deeper and deeper down the hole as they go deeper and deeper into hypnosis. And at the bottom, they can discover themselves in a strange, intriguing land with unusual trees and characters. I normally talk about experiences similar to Alice in Wonderland. Sometimes I make up something absorbing with characters that have relevance to the client's problems. But a therapist can help someone experience any fantasy land they think of would be suitable for the client. And clients doing this for themselves can experience any fantasy land they decide to create. The important thing is to have the experience absorbing and engaging When the clients do self-hypnosis, they can record a track for themselves, creating an absorbing story or journey around the idea of a rabbit hole. They can use this just as an induction, or they can use this for the induction and therapeutically offering themselves metaphors which match the pattern of the problem and solution. So you're lucky enough not to get a rabbit hole induction today. Cool, you've already got a tree to go and climb in. Every tree has a secret door. Secret garden induction. Another guided imagery induction is the secret garden induction. With this induction, the client imagines themselves walking through a garden and into a secret garden. They imagine the experience bringing in what they can see, hear, feel, and smell. This type of induction is great as a guided induction, which is audio recorded to follow. The advantage of guided imagery inductions is that they can be pleasantly absorbing experiences. When a client knows the process, they can do the induction to themselves in their mind, guiding their own attention. But this can be more challenging when someone is a beginner to self hypnosis, unless they audio record the induction. The process of the induction is to start off at the top of a garden, perhaps on a patio, looking out over the garden, then walking down into the garden, taking in all the sensory information, then finding a secret garden, exploring this garden, before moving on from that secret garden into wherever the therapeutic work will be done. I'm just reading at the same time. Yes, so the idea of the rabbit hole one, some people find it a bit too shocking, the fact that you fall down the rabbit hole, but it's supposed to be a bit like Alice in Wonderland, falling down the rabbit hole and shrinking while she falls and then ending up kind of smaller but not tiny because she drinks the liquid to shrink even further, but finds herself fitting down that rabbit hole. Um, so it's just something that's kind of a bit more active as a process in how it feels rather than very passive. So just take a few moments to close your eyes. And with your eyes closed, you can relax. And as you relax, you can begin to imagine yourself stood on a patio, looking out over a beautiful garden. And as you look out over that garden, you can notice the different colours and shades. You can notice movement of leaves in the breeze. And you can begin to become more absorbed in the experience. And as you become more absorbed in the experience, in a moment, you can take the first few steps into that garden. And when you take those steps, you can notice what the ground feels like beneath your feet. And as you walk into that garden, I wonder whether you can notice the sounds of birds and other sounds around you, or the sound of a stream in the distance. And you can notice in a moment that there is a gate at the back of the garden leading to a secret garden that's just for you. You can take your time slowly walking deeper into the garden and go deeper and deeper into a relaxing and focused state of mind as you get closer to the gate. But don't go all the way into hypnosis until you've reached the gate. And when you've reached the gate, you can gently open it. And perhaps notice the sound of that gate opening and the feeling of that gate opening. And step through that gate into that secret garden. A garden that's just for you. And as you look around and notice what you can see, what you can hear, I wonder when you'll notice that bench. And you can walk to the bench and relax yourself down onto that bench. And notice how, while you relax on that bench, your mind wanders and drifts and dreams. And you can let that happen and go into a pleasant place in your mind. Perhaps noticing sounds of the birds, maybe seeing birds in the garden, maybe noticing a pond in the garden, the sounds of rustling leaves, the warmth of the sun on your face. Drifting inside as a part of you continues to listen to my voice. Then in a moment you can drift back out of the experience. On 1, 2, 3, opening your eyes and coming back to the room. Yeah, I use the idea of staircases often if it feels kind of relevant in things I do, because it's something that people can then kind of associate with and use for themselves. But I do frequently separate the counting out from the individual steps because I think it's an unusual experience. It's an unusual feeling to have someone say, okay, I'm going to count down the 20 steps and I want you to step on each step with each count. And they're now counting in time with your out breath, except who walks downstairs in time with their out breath. So it ends up feeling odd. So, and I try and make things like, obviously in here, it's a very basic induction or process. And so it's, you can vary it. So I frequently do things like it being an interesting kind of spiral staircase, having like maybe pictures on the walls that the person could be focusing on at the same time as they walk down the stairs. They stop to look at certain pictures or whatever. So yeah, just making it a bit more kind of detailed. You can obviously add in whatever detail you want. Yeah, we've only got a few more inductions left, I think. I can't remember. Next one's going to be 4 Seasons induction. That might be the last. Oh no, there is another one I talk about but don't guide you through. So this is the last one that I'm going to be guiding you through. The reason it's harder unless it's recorded is because of the fact that there's a lot more. So it's very easy for someone to remember, okay, so I have to just say to myself 3, 2, 1, then close my eyes, 1, 2, 3, and then open my eyes. That's easy to remember. But it's not so easy to have your awareness trying to think, okay, I'm standing at the top of a garden. What is, and trying to tell yourself, okay, let's try and focus on, are there bird sounds? Are there, that it's very hard to kind of guide yourself through a kind of mental imagery or guided visualization-y type of induction. It's very hard to kind of say, right, is this it? Or at least I find it incredibly difficult. Like, is this in it? Is that in it? I can listen along to someone talking about having a sense of bird sounds and things like that. But if my attention is on trying to ask all the questions and trying to direct my attention, I find that too much kind of cognitive involvement in the process, whereas it doesn't take any involvement just to go kind of 3, 2, 1, close my eyes, 1, 2, 3, open my eyes, 3, 2, 1, close my eyes, 1, 2, 3, open my eyes. That takes no effort at all. Anyone can do that. So it's more about the fact that it's much easier to follow someone telling you the induction or having it audio recorded, so you've recorded it to tell it to you, than it is to just think, right, I'm going to do a staircase. No, I'm going to do secret garden induction now. So I'm going to close my eyes, find myself at the top of a garden, walk through the garden. If you can do that, if you're skilled enough to be able to just close your eyes, you're there and you can instantly just find your way through, then that's brilliant. But most people find that they need someone to guide them through it, whether that's a real person or an audio recording, because or else they're focusing on the process of trying to guide themselves through it as well as focusing on experiencing it, which for most people is a challenge. So the 4 seasons induction. The 4 seasons induction is another guided imagery induction. One good element of this induction is that the induction itself is therapeutic, talking about change and transitions and how life moves on, changes, and is cyclical, among other things. It's also very easy to be creative with descriptive language while doing this induction. Using the same structure of traveling through the 4 seasons, it could be done in 5 minutes as a brief hypnotic induction, through to taking an hour or more over gradually experiencing and journeying through the seasons. As with other guided imagery inductions, it works best by involving all of the senses. The induction can be audio recorded or used by a therapist in the session to hypnotize a client whilst teaching them the process of self-hypnosis. Or a client can guide themselves through the process. When talking about what a client can notice in their experience, visually, auditorily, or olfactory or kinesthetically, you can be specific if you know the specifics. If you don't know the specifics, then you can be general to guide the client's attention to noticing that element without dictating what it is specifically that they'll be noticing. So, are you all ready? As you listen to me, I'll talk to you. And as I talk to you, your mind can wander. And while your mind wanders, you can begin to think about different things. And as you think about different things, certain ideas and feelings can begin to come to mind. And you can take a moment to allow those eyes to close. And when those ideas and feelings come to mind, you can find yourself drifting deeper and deeper into the experience in your own unique way. And you know that spring is a time of new life. And you can be out in the countryside and notice how the air seems so fresh and clean. How the colours can appear so bright and vivid. And how much variety you can notice. There are sounds you recognise in the spring, like certain sounds of birds and animals, and sights of young animals experiencing the first few months of life. And when a breeze blows, it can create movement. And you can notice familiar smells that change depending on where you are and on what you're doing. And you're aware of how the state of things can change as summer approaches and the weather changes, and you know what that's like, and the wildlife changes, and the sounds you can hear change. And I wonder what sounds you feel as summer sounds. Perhaps noticing the sounds of certain birds, maybe the sounds of rustling leaves in the trees, and sounds of other animals. As you have a sense of what makes summer, summer, and there'll be certain summer smells, the different smells of different plants, perhaps going and smelling certain flowers, and the smell of cut grass. And you know that people feel different about different seasons depending on their age. And people like different things about different seasons at different ages. And I wonder what you enjoyed about the summer when you were younger. And as you drift through the seasons, certain thoughts and feelings can come to mind. As you drift into autumn, and you know how the colours change in autumn, and the weather changes, and the smells change. And I wonder what else changes for you in autumn. And many children enjoy crunching the fallen golden brown leaves with each step that they take. And we begin to become aware of the nearing winter. And as winter falls, so things change again. A scene may look different than it did before. And I wonder what you used to enjoy as a child about the winter period that isn't the same for adults. And imagine what many children feel like when crunching through snow or playing in snow. And the air is often crisp, and colour often appears to have been drained out to greys, whites, and blacks, with just little wisps of colour that you can notice here and there. And you can get a sense of noticing a warm and inviting log cabin, and crunching your way through snow towards that log cabin, seeing the glow from within the cabin, aware of the way the sound sounds. And as you approach that cabin, it can seem vaguely familiar yet unknown. And you can enter the cabin and notice what the door was like to open, as you see what the inside of that cozy, relaxing, warm, and comforting cabin looks like. As you sit down in the most comfortable chair with a warm drink, having a sense of relaxing back in that chair, listening to the crackling log fire, noticing the way the light dances around the room, feeling the warmth in the room, drinking that drink, relaxing back in that chair and drifting into a pleasant, dreamy reverie. As you now relax and find yourself instinctively drifting into that pleasant reverie. Drifting into pleasant memories and thoughts. I don't know whether you'll drift deeper with the sound of my voice or the spaces between my words. That's it. And then in a moment, you can come back out of this state on 1, 2, 3, and opening your eyes and coming back to the room. I think somewhere on my channel is like an hour-long Four Seasons meditation, and then you've also got like the cat version with the cat walking through the seasons. You've got I don't know. There's a few different Four Seasons ones that I've done. Someone asked me a few weeks back if I could do another Four Seasons one, and I sort of explained to them that I've got like 4 of them on my channel and shared all of them. I think there's 4 of them that very specifically have Four Seasons as a large part of the process. So the mirror induction, I'm not going to have you do this one. An induction I find really interesting for self-hypnosis is the mirror induction. The mirror induction involves looking at yourself and hypnotizing that mirror you. And because the mirror you is the real you, you end up hypnotizing yourself. It's a little more advanced in that it's easier to do when you understand how to hypnotize people. But it can be done by beginners and can be taught in sessions. What you're doing is playing both hypnotist and subject. So you tell the mirror you what you're observing, and you can offer suggestions for them to follow. Then as the subject, you follow those suggestions so that the mirror you is following the suggestions. The steps of the mirror induction are: look at yourself in a mirror and hypnotize that mirror you. Say what you see. Start by saying, as you sit there looking at me, just allow your shoulders to relax. Then follow your instructions by relaxing your shoulders. Then give yourself further suggestions until your eyes just want to shut. Suggest that you can go deeper with each breath you take and with the spaces between the words. When you see the mirror you breathe out, you can say that's right, to acknowledge this. You can do the same whenever you know that mirror you has blinked, which is another process of going inside the mind. Then as the eyes begin to want to close, suggest that you can go to a special place in your mind where all the necessary changes can occur at an unconscious level. Make the experience time limited by stating to yourself how long you want to be in hypnosis for, and that you want your unconscious to make all the necessary and appropriate changes to support you in achieving what it is that you want. So that's an induction that I find interesting, is hypnotizing yourself in a mirror. So, and then you follow your own suggestions, which makes the mirror you following the suggestions. The something to use for someone distracted by pain would depend on that individual. You could have them focus on the pain, or you could have them focus on something other than the pain. So it would depend on the individual. Some people, even though all the research points out that you can get rid of the pain by having people focus on the pain. You can alter it and make that pain disappear, etc., etc. Um, some people are just too uncomfortable with the idea of focusing on it, because a large part of what they try and do is try to not focus on it. And um, if you focus on it wrong, it obviously can end up feeling like you're focusing on increasing the pain, rather than focusing on like the sensations of the pain rather than the pain itself. Um, but it would come down to every individual client and what works for them. So some will focus on the pain, others will focus on something other than the pain. A chair feeling familiar is purely because it's something you've never seen before. So I want it to be new. I don't want it to be a familiar chair. I don't want it to be, I don't want it to be a real chair that you know, because I don't want you to associate a real chair of yours with being in hypnosis. So the idea is that I don't want you to sort of associate, say, I don't know, like this chair that I'm sitting in here. I don't want me to associate me sitting in this chair that I'm sitting in, say, in my mind, with being in hypnosis. But I want it to be familiar in terms of, it's a safe feeling chair, it's a comfortable chair, it's a familiar chair. So it's about the familiarity. It's about kind of just knowing that it's something that you instinctively just know is right. It's a bit like, when you say to somebody during therapy, I'm going to meet the, say, 6 or 8 year old you. So say you're helping someone with some, working through something, a bit like the February man, where the February man kind of technique or approach, where you go back through the person's life, dropping into the person's life as a friendly therapist, or however you would describe the person, who helps them in those periods of time during the life. The idea is that you would say something like, you bump into me and I've got I hand you your favorite sweet, or something like that, so that you're saying, I'm a familiar person in this experience. I'm not a stranger here. So you're trying to give that idea of, I'm not a stranger, I'm a familiar person. So in this, you're trying to give the idea of, this is familiar, even if you don't recognize it in the experience. It's familiar in terms of something about it just resonates, gives you all those positive feelings that you get with something that you kind of know and trust, and you know to be comfortable. So you instinctively know, oh, it's going to be really comfortable. It looks so familiar and so relaxing and kind of resonates, but you don't know it. It's a brand new, first time seen chair, so that you don't then have it as a real life chair. It's not like, oh, I've got this chair in my living room that's the most comfortable chair in the world. Well, this could be as familiar as that comfortable chair in the world, but it's not your chair. So it means that it can be the most comfortable chair, but it's only your made up in your mind chair, not one that you're going to encounter. If you can imagine yourself in front of you, then feel free to imagine yourself. But the idea of the mirror induction is that you are hypnotizing yourself, and you can't necessarily see what you're doing. You can't hypnotize yourself in terms of as a subject necessarily from just trying to hallucinate yourself or imagine yourself in front of you. The inner dialogue isn't normally an issue with the mirror induction. No, it's not a My Friend John induction. So the My Friend John induction, the idea of that is that you're, say, hypnotizing someone by telling that person you're hypnotizing what you see them doing, but you're pretending you're not doing that. So you're saying, oh yeah, someone came in here the other day and asked me, how do you go into hypnosis? And so now you've just given a suggestion, you go into hypnosis. And I told them that to go into hypnosis, you've given them another suggestion, go into hypnosis. all you do is begin to relax your breathing. And you say that as you watch them breathe out. And then I told them that as you go into hypnosis, you often find that your eyes just gaze off, and you say that as they gaze off. So you're you're using the same language. You're doing hypnosis, but you're not using that approach. So that approach is very much about trying to covertly hypnotize someone. With the mirror induction, you're not trying to covertly hypnotize someone. You're very directly hypnotizing yourself. So, for example, I can be looking into the camera here. I can see myself on the screen. So technically, I'm not looking into the camera because that's up there, and I'm looking at the screen. But I can see myself in the screen. So every time I blink, I could say, "That's it." Deeper and deeper. That's it, all the way. And so I'm responding to the fact that I see the blinking happening. Um, Whenever you say something like "that's it," obviously when you're talking, you're breathing out. So you can say that's it, or whatever on a long out breath. But you can see the long out breath, but you know you're doing the long out breath because you're saying "that's it." So the idea is you are essentially hypnotizing the mirror image of you. You know, that mirror, like in this case, the video image of me. You're hypnotizing that person, but because that person is you, and you are following along to the suggestions, you are becoming hypnotized exactly as a subject would if you were doing exactly the same. So you're essentially just doing what you do for bog standard, normal doing hypnosis with a real client, except that that real client happens to be your mirror image. And so by hypnotizing that client exactly as you would do hypnosis with literally anybody at all, I teach how to do this in the first 15 minutes of any of my training courses, where I just say, look at the person in front of you and say what you see, with the goal of them being in hypnosis. That's literally the instructions I give to students who've never done hypnosis in their life before, within 15 minutes of them coming onto my training courses. And then I expect them to go away and hypnotize each other, so that within 30 minutes, everyone has hypnotized everyone else and everyone has experienced being hypnotized. And the only instruction is say what you see, and say it as being the correct thing to happen in line with the goal of the person being hypnotized. And you're not doing anything different than bog standard normal hypnosis. You're just doing it, treating that mirror image as a legitimate client in front of you, like a real person. And it is a real person, it's you. So by hypnotizing that mirror, you are hypnotizing you. You're guiding yourself into the experience. So you don't end up stuck with internal dialogue problems or anything, because you literally are just hypnotizing the person in front of you like you would anyone else, like you would if instead of that mirror image, it was a real different person in front of you. Um, so yeah, so there's never a having to hush in a dialogue problem with it, because it is just bog standard doing the hypnosis. There are other fun things you can do with mirrors though, like the fact that if you just light a candle or have your mobile phone, so it's a very dark room, and then just have a mirror, so that the only light is that very slight amount of light, and then just stare into your eyes in that mirror, and keep staring into your eyes for a very long period of time, like an extended period of time, like a number of minutes. Suddenly your face changes, and you don't look like you looking back at you. It's a completely different person, sometimes not a particularly nice looking person, but a completely different person looking back at you. So I always find that incredibly fascinating, where your brain starts trying to take the minimal information it's got from the fact that it's very low light, and the fact that most of what you're looking at, because you're looking into your own eyes in the mirror, is being seen out of your peripheral vision. And so it's not real, kind of, um, most of what you see is in your brain. Most of what you think you see when you're looking, like I'm looking at this computer, And so a chunk of the computer will be looked at through my foveal vision, and that'll be hopefully relatively accurate. Nearly everything else around it will be made up by my brain of what it thinks should be in those areas, and not necessarily what's really there. And obviously, you've also got a blind spot hovering around you, which again, you've got literally no information on your going into your brain where that blind spot happens to be. You are creating that entire bit, hallucinating something in its place, so that you don't notice this dark spot moving around as you would if you didn't have something hallucinated in its place. Um, so we've got just a little bit more of the book to go, but I'm just reading down these bits. That was the last one I'm going to guide you through, I think. I might guide you through one more, but it's not in the book. It's just that I just suddenly thought it's a bit different. I might guide you through it. You probably already know it, but I might do that anyway. Yeah. So another thing with the mirror one that helps with inner dialogue is that you are talking, and it's very hard to be focusing on a different inner dialogue to what's coming out of your mouth while you're telling yourself what to do. A bit like the three things induction. If you're someone who has a lot of inner dialogue going on and that's a problem, then the three things induction generally works much better than the eyes open, eyes closed one based on going 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, because you've got something tying up your inner dialogue. Likewise, the self suggestion induction, which I haven't covered here, but the self suggestion induction is where you say to somebody, okay, I'm going to hypnotize you, and I want you to turn everything I say to you into a personal suggestion to yourself. So if I say to you, just take a moment to close your eyes, you say to yourself, I'm just going to take a moment to close my eyes. And then you close your eyes. And if I say, you can begin to relax deeper and deeper, you say to yourself, I can begin to relax deeper and deeper. So the person ends up not being able to focus on their inner dialogue, like on going off on tangents to other things, because they're so busy having to listen when they're not, not talking to themselves, because they need to know what they've got to say to themselves next, and then saying to themselves what it is that I've just said, but now in their language back to themselves, so as if they're giving themselves that suggestion. So it's important then, obviously, for the hypnotist to only give short bursts of sentences, not, I want you to say back to yourself in your words what you hear me say to you, and then the hypnotist talking for like 3 minutes, and then the client thinking, I've absolutely no idea, I was lost after the first 4 words. So it has to be things like, just take a moment to begin to relax. That's short. They can remember that sentence. They can then say to themselves, I'm just going to take a moment to begin to relax. And you can take a moment to close your eyes, and I can take a moment to close my eyes. And your shoulders can relax, and my shoulders can relax. So you're giving short little bursts of speech that they can replicate for themselves. No, you're looking at a real mirror. You have a real mirror in front of you, and you hypnotize that you in the mirror, as you would with literally any client that you would work with. You just do the hypnosis on the you that's in the mirror. So you say what you see and hypnotize that you in the mirror exactly as you would with any other client. The non-consciously writing or drawing answers was about them doing that as a technique in their mind. So what you would do is have the person kind of, well, I normally just say, just take a moment to close your eyes. That's literally nearly every situation. That's literally as far as I get with any kind of induction with someone. Just take a moment to close your eyes, and then you say, just imagine, say, a whiteboard in your mind, or a chalkboard, or a computer screen, or whatever it is that's relevant to the person you're working with and their age and what have you. So imagine a whiteboard in behind you, or somewhere in your mind, or wherever it happens to be. And if your unconscious is willing to begin to work with you and help you to address this problem, just let that, will it write yes on that board? And then you just go silent and you wait. And if it's willing, then it writes yes on the board. And then the person just says, yes, it's written yes. If a client ends up in sort of doing something different, you go with whatever they've done differently. So I've had some people where I've started the technique like that, and they've said the answer's yes, but it's not a writing on the board. I just got that feeling in my gut. So you think, okay, so for you, the feelings are where it's at. So you then just say, okay, and if it's willing to start doing that work, let that communicate that to you, and then you just go with whatever they've naturally, spontaneously come up with. But there's demonstrations of me doing this where, which I think I put on YouTube, I can't remember, um, where it literally is the person just imagines the writing appearing, and then you can get whole sentences and things. So the person will go silent for a while, a sentence will get written on that board, and they know it's not a sentence they're creating. So you normally get the feedback from the client saying, I was surprised by some of the answers that it gave, because I wouldn't have thought of that answer. Or I thought it was going to be something different. And then the answer that came up on the board was different to the one I thought it was going to be. So with bits like that, it's not like you can do automatic writing. So you can, for example, if someone's capable, have them automatically kind of just say, right, I'm going to put a pen or a pencil or whatever in your hand and a bit of paper, and rest your hand on there. And that hand can just automatically write. But again, not everyone can do something as sophisticated as that, especially not without some training or being very responsive at doing that kind of thing. Because that's quite a technical thing to be doing, to be able to write, especially if you're deeply relaxed and your muscles just want to flop down. So you can do automatic writing, but I have never yet done that in therapy sessions because it's a very unreliable kind of way of going about it. Because I'd probably 99% of the time have the person just not end up writing anything. I'd be quicker and then it's illegible half the time. I'd be quicker just to have asked them for the answer rather than have them write it. But there are times, like for example, there's times with there's a case of Milton Erickson's where he asked the person to write down whatever it was that they needed to know, and to then put that piece of paper, fold it up, put that piece of paper away until they need to know it consciously, or when it's helpful consciously. And it was something like that they've made the right decision by separating from their partner, or something like that was written on the paper. And then, like 8 months later, they suddenly stumbled across the paper that they had folded up and put away somewhere. They'd forgotten about, lost it essentially. And then they stumbled across it, and the paper said something like, "You made the right decision," or something like that. And that was what they needed to hear after they had gone and done. So they knew non-consciously they were going to end up leaving the person that they were with, but they also knew non-consciously they were going to doubt that they'd made the right decision about that. And they knew non-consciously at what point, having doubted that they made that right decision, they would need to see confirmation that they knew within themselves that they'd made the right decision. And even though they would then doubt themselves, thinking they've made the wrong decision. And so that's kind of how it played out. So there are times where you could do something like automatic writing and it could end up helpful. But I'm more likely generally to do something like, just imagine that being written up on a blackboard or a whiteboard in your mind's eye, or something along those lines. And what you don't want, so with things like using pendulums and things like that, you kind of don't want them to consciously interfere or be putting judgments in place. So you can do things, for example, like if someone had a pendulum and you had different answers coming through on a pendulum, you could say to somebody, I want you just to count in your mind, count out loud from say 300 or from 1,000 or something like that backwards. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to ask you some questions, and that pendulum can answer, or something like that. And then they give you the answers without consciously being able to do too much analyzing, because they're busy attempting to count backwards from a high number at the time. Um, so you can do things like that as a way of distracting them from being able to be too consciously interfering, because it's easy, even when someone's imagining things on chalkboards or whatever, it's easy for someone to think, oh, that doesn't seem like the right answer, it's probably this instead. And so it's having them trust that what comes up is what you want them to say, regardless of how stupid it sounds or whether they agree with it or whatever. That's not relevant. It's about whatever it's going to teach them therapeutically. Yeah, there's nothing at all paranormal, obviously, about any of it. I like the word reverie, so I quite like ending up using it. It's only really been in my vocabulary because of doing the sort of things I do, that I just wanted to add it. Once I read it, I think I thought, oh, I like that word. I'm adding that. Yep, I've done a Ouija board instead as a way of doing this. Nothing. There is no difference between guided hypnosis and guided meditation, but people who do meditation will often say, I don't do hypnosis. They don't want that kind of connection to, they don't want the hypnosis connection to what they do. But there's no difference between somebody saying, and you can, yeah, if somebody says, yes, of course there is, meditation, guided meditation is nothing like hypnosis, well, then you can say, well, okay, what is this hypnotist doing that makes it different to what you're doing? When the hypnotist says something like, we're going to do a Four Seasons induction, for example, when the hypnotist then guides you through Four Seasons, apart from the hypnotist perhaps having better skill at it, because the hypnotist has learned about the language, potentially, hopefully, they've learned about the language they're using. So a hypnotist is likely to be able to use better language in what they're doing. Yeah, marketing. Yeah, the hypnotist is likely to use better language. So, for example, a hypnotist might use presuppositions to imply that something's going to be happening. A hypnotist might have, both people hopefully will have an understanding of using a lot of sensory language and focusing you around all the sensory stuff. Um, but the hypnotist will know not to use things like not all the time and don't, unless it's in context with what. So saying to someone, don't go into this state too quickly, is a good way to use don't, because you're essentially saying you are going into this state. It's now just a question of how fast. And if you're resistant as a client, by saying don't go in too quickly, the way to be resistant against a suggestion not to go in too quickly is that you go in quicker, because by going in quicker, you're going against the suggestion you've just been given. Um, so a hypnotist will know these sort of things, but you wouldn't necessarily find a hypnotist. For example, I love the meditainment MP3s. They're meditation MP3s, but for example, their full asleep meditation has the woman saying you're walking through a desert. You can see a mirage off in the distance. You're kind of dying of thirst, you're really weak, you're really struggling, and then she starts saying, "Don't give up, don't give up." And all I'm hearing, and I obviously find it amusing because I do hypnosis, but all I'm hearing is that she's telling people who are listening to give up while they're walking through this desert, dying of thirst, trying to head to this mirage, hoping it's real. And a hypnotist wouldn't make that mistake because a hypnotist would know the language, what sort of language to use. So a hypnotist would perhaps talk about having the strength to continue pushing on, and all sort of more positive and hopefully motivational language. So that would be a difference between the person doing the guided meditation versus the person doing hypnosis. But generally, you can get a guided meditation that ends up counting down, doing staircase induction. You get guided meditations where they say, I'm going to have you imagine walking through a forest, or I'm going to imagine you walking along a seafront, or I'm going to have you imagine walking through a country garden, or I'm going to have you imagine traveling through the seasons, or whatever it happens to be. Or they'll say, I want you just to focus on, so if we just take the guided part and just focus on meditation, a meditation person might say, oh no, I don't want to drift into an Aussie accent. So just talking about meditation, someone doing meditation might end up saying, I want you to focus on that sound of that ringing bell. And they might sort of ring a singing bowl or ring a bell of some kind and have you, it is terrible. I'm allowed to be terrible. It's spontaneous. They might have them focus on a sound of something ringing or whatever. A hypnotist would do exactly the same. They would say, focus on this spot, focus on this sound, focus on this one thing, whatever it is. In meditation, you might focus on a flickering flame. In hypnosis, you might focus on a flickering flame. So both are doing the same thing, that you end up focusing on a single point with the idea of then hopefully being able to kind of get rid of all other focus and get rid of internal dialogue and everything like that. They might say, focus on your breathing. And a hypnotist will say, focus on your breathing. And so there's not really any difference between, you can take all these inductions that hypnotists do and all the inductions that people doing meditation do, and they'll end up being the same thing. You sort of see them and think, well, that's no different. It's just the way that the language is used is better when the hypnotist does it, because the hypnotist knows more about language. The meditation person perhaps just knows the induction. So a meditation person might talk about things like, what would something be like? A hypnosis person might talk about when this happens and before that happens and after that happens, and use a lot more presuppositions and things. So I will read the last bit of this book. So developing your own inductions. The advantage of learning a range of different hypnotic inductions is that you can learn how people respond to different types of ideas and suggestions and different ways that things can be phrased. Once you've begun to master these inductions, you can then create your own self-hypnosis inductions for people, perhaps as audio tracks. You can also then create your own creative ways of hypnotizing clients. So you can create an engaging story for someone about talking woodland animals, or use a familiar childhood program and make an induction that uses the characters and settings from that program. Or you can mix and match different induction elements, like having walking down steps linked with an arm lowering, or going on a hot air balloon ride with an arm levitation. Or a 4 seasons induction could be 4 seasons in your beautiful place. So like a nice garden or something. Or you may do an induction with just 1 season and taking time to really explore the sights, sounds, feelings, and experiences of just that 1 season. Hypnotherapists can set up triggers to re-induce trance or self-hypnosis. Or it could be that they just count from 3 to 1 and say sleep now, or just now, and have the client close their eyes and enter hypnosis. And each time they do this, they have the client go deeper into hypnosis, with 1, 2, 3, open your eyes being the suggestion that brings them out of hypnosis. Then the client can hear the hypnotherapist's voice in their mind saying 3, 2, 1 now, and they close their eyes and enter hypnosis without the need for the hypnotherapist. Alternatively, when the client comes into the session, the hypnotist can suggest that the client can have them follow it into hypnosis. A trigger can be set up by practicing repeatedly with a hypnotherapist present, so that without the hypnotherapist, they can set off the trigger and will enter hypnosis on their own. Conclusion, the last page. This book is the first in a planned series of 10 books on hypnotherapy. In this book, I've shared what I feel are the basics to understanding hypnotherapy. If you take the time to learn and master, just kick the chair, learn and master the content in the book, you'll be well ahead of many other hypnotherapists in your ability to do hypnosis and use hypnotic principles therapeutically. You'll be able to do hypnosis without the need for rigid hypnotherapy scripts, making you more client-centered and able to be responsive to the needs of your client. In Book 2, Hypnotherapy Revealed, the Ericksonian Approach, that one, I share my perspective on the Ericksonian approach. I share the 3 fundamental principles of the Ericksonian approach: how to craft healing hypnotic stories and explore hypnotic language patterns. Then in Book 3, Hypnotherapy Revealed, Hypnotherapy Transcripts, I'll share over 100 sample hypnosis inductions and therapy scripts. This book and the Ericksonian Approach book come first because I wouldn't want someone reading the hypnotherapy scripts book and becoming a hypnotherapist who uses scripts. I want the readers of that book to be comfortable to work unscripted, who will use the scripts for ideas and for education. Milton Erickson said that people should learn as many different types or styles of induction as possible to get used to a wide variety of ways that they can induce hypnosis. It wasn't so that they would copy the scripts and become reliant on them, but so that they increased their ability to be flexible when working with clients. And that's the end of the book. So thank you all for sitting through my Hypnotherapy Revealed, Introduction to Hypnotherapy. Obviously, anyone who hasn't joined me for the previous books, previous videos, you can go through the previous videos and it takes you through this entire book from page 1 all the way through to the last page. And all of these are in a playlist on my channel. And following requests, I did put down what chapters specifically I read, even though it is on the thumbnail. The sort of bulk of what I read. I've put down the chapters specifically that I've read in the descriptions so that you know, but it is in chronological order, so, or whatever order you would call it, start to finish order. So yeah, let's have a look. I'm glad that you've learned a lot. Hopefully it's helped you to gain greater insight into my sleep meditations as well, like what I'm doing in them, why I'm using this pillow. Annoys me. If I sit here too long and I'm typing or something and I'm stationary, then I need it, but without it, it just keeps propping me up too much. I can't slouch. Thank you for having both books. I look forward to having book 3 released. I'm not going to go straight into reading book 2, that one, but if people want me to, after I've had a bit of a break from reading so that I can do some of these without reading, just sort of doing other things, then I can come back to it if we're still in lockdown and life hasn't moved on, and so we're still all free to chat, then I can move on to book 2 in the future. Um, so yeah, so hopefully this has been helpful in terms of helping to understand kind of what I do. So you might have heard multiple bits and pieces and thought, oh, that's why Dan does this, or that's why Dan does that. So yeah, thank you for buying book 2, or when you buy it, thank you. You're curious now. Curious is good. Curiouser and curiouser. It's always good to get curiouser and curiouser. And obviously, yesterday, no, I say yesterday, it's not. This morning, early hours of this morning, well, 4 a.m., my latest, this week's sleep meditation went live, which is the World War II one. I know someone said that it's a bit dark. I don't think it's a dark story, but at least one person who's left a comment does. I think it's a nice story, personally. I quite like my the World War II one. Yes, you can read my books independently of me if you want. Or we can all tune into other people's channels and read them. Straight away, virtually. When was the first time that I realized I'd actually succeeded in hypnotizing someone? I think I just kind of assumed that when I first tried it, that the person seemed to do what was said, or they seemed to respond as I was suggesting, and so they just kind of they responded, and so I thought this has worked. I've had lots of times where not so much I haven't thought the hypnosis is that they haven't been hypnotized, but there's lots of times, especially in the early years, where I would expect therapy to, because of the way it's portrayed. So I'll tell you some, not stories as such, but I'll sort of talk about my early years, so to speak, the black and white years. So going back to when I started out, everything that I ever saw from a teenager onwards kind of implied that with hypnosis, you got results pretty much straight away. You told someone they didn't have a problem anymore, and they literally just didn't have a problem anymore. That's how it's portrayed. That's how it's portrayed in films. Often, that's how it's portrayed in the media, that it's some all powerful kind of weird thing. That's how it's portrayed when stage hypnotists seem to use it. They say, look, I can get rid of this problem instantly. See, they don't have their problem anymore. So that's how it's always portrayed. So I didn't ever doubt that I was hypnotizing people, because I would see that people were getting hypnotized, people were responding to what I had suggested. So if I was suggesting relaxation, I could see that people were becoming relaxed and slouched and dribbling and all the things that go with relaxing. I could see that if I did, say, really long inductions, people would, if the whole induction say was focused on relaxing, people would become even more relaxed and, showing signs they're responding even sort of as much to the whole thing. But definitely in my late teens, early 20s, I would suggest things to people like to quit smoking or whatever. And before I had learned hypnotherapy, I had actually taken hypnotherapy courses, but before I'd learned hypnotherapy, just what I was being taught was hypnotherapy. I would do the scripts that I was told, which is, for example, with smoking, it would be kind of aversion therapy, close your eyes, going to hypnotize you, going to tell you that cigarettes taste like tar, that it's like tar pouring down your throat when you smoke cigarettes. And that it's going to make you cough and splutter and you're going to feel horrible and all these kind of things. So I would do all of that exactly as the scripts and the courses I had taken taught me that I should be doing, and people would carry on smoking. It wouldn't work. So I had no doubt that I was doing the hypnosis fine and that people were being hypnotized. But I also knew that hypnosis doesn't make people like automatons. It doesn't make people unquestionably follow suggestions. It doesn't make people highly suggestible to the point where they can't kind of not follow along to the suggestion, um, which I know is a big thing in the media that seems to get portrayed. And so, um, but what I did know was I was obviously getting the therapy wrong. I was doing something wrong with the therapy that I thought I must be missing something about hypnosis here, because I seem to be able to do the hypnosis, but I can't seem to. I'll show the shirt in a minute. I seem to be able to do the hypnosis, but there's something I must be doing wrong about the hypnosis, because people are still having their problems, despite me saying you don't have your problem anymore. And it took actually attending proper courses and reading proper books, not just the ones that I was reading, to learn that hypnosis isn't the therapy, and that hypnosis just helps therapy to work better. And so um, that's the bit where I had the learning, not about the hypnosis part, but about the therapy part, and realizing you have to really know how to do therapy. You can't just know how to do hypnosis and then hope that you can now treat anyone of anything, pretty much. Um, so yeah, so for me, that was really the big thing. But I saw another question as well. I'll show the t-shirt in a minute. I've just seen another question I might answer in a second as well. But there was something here that I saw. Where was it? In the past, hypnosis was not considered mainstream. That's always an interesting one. There are some countries where hypnosis is still kind of, especially countries where there's a lot of religion, um, there's kind of a misinformation going on that means that religious people in some countries and in some kind of branches of religion see it as really evil and somehow about controlling people, and they treat it in the same way that they treat alcohol, in terms of they'll say alcohol's evil because when someone's drunk, the devil can take over them and make them do things they don't want to do. And then I've had that argument from a number of religious people in relation to hypnosis, where they've said hypnosis is evil because it opens the person up to the devil taking control of them and making them do things they don't want to do. It lets down all your defenses. And it doesn't matter what I say to these people in terms of, no, actually, you've got an unusual view of hypnosis. Here is the science behind it all. None of this science demonstrates what you're describing or is even similar to this thing that you're describing as hypnosis. So there are, even today, some areas of people where it's kind of, frowned upon, but it's not that it's not mainstream. So among scientists, hypnosis has been relatively well accepted as an established thing since about the 1950s. Um, there's no doubt among scientists about hypnosis in terms of its validity. Where all the arguments are is, it's a bit like when people try and talk about consciousness. There's no doubt among scientists that consciousness is a thing, or having conscious awareness and sort of what have you. What the doubt is how it arises, um, what you would describe it as, what is it, and it's all those questions. And so in science, the questions aren't around whether hypnosis is a thing, and it hasn't been for decades and decades now, since like the 1950s. The questions are always around how is it working, what's the kind of processes. It's all those sort of questions. So scientifically, it's been mainstream since like the 1950s. It's publicly where publicly people base their opinions more on what they see in the media than on scientific papers. So, whereas scientists hopefully base more of their opinions on scientific papers and what the consensus is among the scientists who know that field than they do on the media and how things are portrayed in the media. So, for the general public, they get their information from TV programs, films, um, novels, uh, kind of tabloid stories about hypnosis, like, such and such hypnotist did this bad thing to me or whatever. Um, TV shows, like hypnosis shows, as well as other types of shows. So that's where the public gets most of its information. And obviously, that's not the most reliable way to get information on whether something is valid or not. Um, Aliens are friendly creatures. I'm sure there's some unfriendly ones. Just like I think humans are generally friendly creatures, but there are also some very unfriendly ones. So the T-shirt is. Let's see if I can stand up. It's a Pink Floyd kind of themed one. That's the T-shirt. Obviously, if they do live stream reading my book, they need to do it in a British accent and adding all the emphasis and everything. Maybe doing a parody Dan. Maybe they should just set up that as a channel. Parody Dan. They can then parody all of my sleep meditations or something. Yeah, so the idea, obviously, aversion as part of a process can work very well. We're motivated towards and away from things. Often, what gets people into therapy is away from motivation, is I hate the situation I'm in. That's what gets people into therapy. What a lot of people haven't thought about is what they want instead. And part of the difficulty, if you don't use both motivations, is that people are motivated away from whatever situation they're in that's leading them to go to therapy. They're not motivated towards something. And so they move away from the thing they don't like enough to lose the motivation. And so gradually that thing catches them up again and they end up back where they started. And then they don't like it. So they go and seek that help again. They then are motivated, they're motivated to get away from it. They take on the advice or whatever and they move away. They don't know where they're going. They don't have something new that keeps drawing them forward. They don't have something new that they're creating. They haven't looked at what is the life I want instead, or whatever it happens to be. And so they keep them bouncing back. So that half the motivation can be helpful. The main difficulty is that obviously, say you stop someone smoking, if you look at problems as being solutions, as I generally kind of do think of problems, I think of problems as being a client's solution for a problem. I don't think of problems as being the problem. So smoking isn't necessarily the problem. It might be, but my first take is I wonder whether this problem is a solution to an actual problem. So the person's smoking because it helps them to manage stress. It helps them to socialize. It helps them to make sure they take breaks. It helps them to start conversations. It helps them to feel like they fit in with some social group or some bunch of people. Maybe it gives them a sense of status, or did at some point. So again, it doesn't mean that it's a solution necessarily, using smoking as the example, necessarily here and now. It could just be it's now formed a habit that has no real purpose. It's just a bunch of associations. When I'm in X situation, I do Y, because it's become instinctive and automatic. But it could be, for example, as the 17-year-old kid that was the smoker, or 16-year-old kid or whatever that was the smoker, you were the one that, say, others looked up to as, wow, they're so cool, they smoke. So I know obviously that's not always the case, but there are some areas where the person who smokes is the cool one because they smoke. And so you've got that sense of status from it. Or um, people come up to you and say, will you go and buy me cigarettes, because they can see that you smoke, and so they know that as a smoker you might buy them cigarettes. And so you get the sense of status by being the one that everyone comes to go and buy cigarettes for underage smokers, for example. It could be that it's actually a therapy for that person in some way. And so if you take away their therapy, you stop them smoking, say on some level they think, I really want to stop smoking, and they don't make the association of, because they've never taken time to focus on it, of the fact that they smoke as a form of therapy. You take away their therapy, what do they do instead? What does the lad or girl who smokes because it gives them a sense of status, because others come up and say, will you go and buy me cigarettes? What do they do when they stop smoking and no one comes up to them anymore and asks them if they can buy cigarettes, because they're not smelling of smoke and they're not standing around smoking? It's not obvious they smoke. What do? What does the person do who works 10-hour shifts and would never take a break, because maybe culturally in that workplace it's frowned upon to take breaks, that the only way they take breaks is because they smoke? And so that craving overcomes the kind of, in this culture we don't take breaks, so the craving's like, forget the culture, I'm going out for a cigarette. And that becomes kind of accepted, that all the staff who smoke do go and take breaks and go and smoke. The staff who don't smoke sit at their desks 10 hours a day and never leave their desk from whenever they start work to when they finish work. And so again, you've got, what does the person do if they stop smoking and now don't take breaks, and yet they need the breaks? They end up going back to the smoking again. So it's without kind of looking at the bigger picture a bit, rather than just saying, I'm going to suggest this away and hope it disappears. I'm going to make it so it's such a horrible experience for them, they don't do it, or whatever. That on its own, the person may stumble into the right answer and put another strategy or something else in place to make sure that they're still living their life in a healthy way or whatever. But not everyone will obviously do that. Um, I'm only likely to, well, technically, cactuses as a metaphor work for other addictions as well, especially addictions you're not necessarily thinking of totally eradicating. So, for example, I could imagine talking about cactuses in relation to gambling if it's a case of the person's going to kind of end up maybe occasionally having like a games night with friends where they may do very light, low level, um, kind of card games with maybe 25 quid or $25, $50, whatever, as the maximum that they'll spend on that one night. But it's just done for fun. It's not done for any other reason, as a way of kind of portraying. Obviously, the cactus works as a metaphor by the fact that it's saying you can have a bit of that and survive perfectly fine. Have too much, that's not good for you. So a drinker may not necessarily totally quit drinking. They may just cut right down to the occasional drink here and there. A gambler may not totally stop gambling. They may just cut down to, it's no longer an addiction. It's just, oh, I play cards on a Thursday night or whatever it happens to be. So it wouldn't be, I probably wouldn't just think, oh, let's use herbs for this and let's use bamboo for that or something. It would be in relation to plants themselves. It was the fact that the individual I'd mentioned it, so not talking about the cactuses, but where I talked about the person, the drinker having the plants, was that they needed to be focusing their attention on looking after something, having to start having time for something, and starting to get their needs met in relation to the plants rather than in relation to uh, the alcohol. And there are other things. So, for example, with drinking, I've done things like, I want you to go to the pub and I want you to drink 5 pints, gulp them back, don't sort of sip them, literally gulp back the 5 pints, gulp back 5 shots, and then head home. If you still want to drink after that, feel free to go. So they don't have any alcohol at home. Feel free to then go out to the shop and buy yourself some alcohol. So I've set that as a task before, where people who say, it doesn't matter what you say, I don't plan on quitting drinking, I'll say, well, will you drink something on my behalf then? And often the person will say, well, okay, then if the therapy is that I have to go and have an alcoholic drink, I'll do it. But someone who perhaps drinks spirits and doesn't drink pints is going to end up feeling sick and bloated often by gulping back pints back to back. And yet the alcohol content of the pints and the amount of liquid means that you feel bloated and really sick and too ill to really want to be going out doing anything else long before you have consumed a considerable amount of alcohol. And so you then start changing the drinking pattern. So there are different things that I do, but it's always around what's right for that individual, based on their life, their interests, their specific reason. So, for example, gambling addiction. What is that person? What's the gambling addiction therapy for? And that's what I want to know. And then what needs to change in their life so they don't need that therapy. So if it was, say, they get a buzz, it's the only exciting thing in their life, well, then what else can they do? I've told the story before about the teen who slept with lots of 20-something-year-old men as a way of getting excitement in her life. And she didn't have a lot else going on in her life. Her mum had banned her from playing football because of her bad behavior. And I sort of had spoken about, does she have any interests and what have you? As someone who, I wasn't working with the daughter, I was working just with the mum. I said, has she got any interests or anything? Oh, she absolutely loves football. She finds it so exciting. She gets incredibly excited when she has to play football. So obviously, as a good parent, the first thing I did, because of all her bad behavior, is made sure that she never attends football. I've banned her from playing football. And so obviously my kind of work with the parent was to help the parent to get that daughter back into the football club again, and to be incredibly passionate and supportive and motivational about the daughter going to the football. And then what happened was, because obviously the mum had tried multiple times saying, you can't keep sleeping with these older men, etc. And obviously the teenage daughter just never listened once to the mum telling her to stop doing the behavior. So I said, well, if you can get that need met by something she loves doing, she won't need to get the need met by this other thing that's unhealthy, that she knows is unhealthy, like not healthy for her as like a 14-year-old or whatever. And you don't then have to have told her to stop the behavior, because what you've done is made sure that she stops the behavior by default because she's busy doing something she enjoys, that gets the same buzz that she gets from doing that thing that none of the involved adults, none of the involved like social workers and everything, want her to be doing. But you haven't had to set up that kind of challenge with a teenager, where a teenager by default is normally going to try and go against and rebel against what the adults are trying to tell them to do. And so that's what the mum did, got her into football, back into the football club, had convinced the coach to give her another go. Part of her challenge in the football was that she would get angry at times, and so she'd also kind of had started working on how to help her to relax, taught her meditation, things like that. Um, so she got back into the football. Her improved behavior and lack of going out and sleeping with all these men meant that she ended up going back into college, which she'd been bunking off of for months. Then she got herself qualifications, got herself into university, and now actually runs courses to try and help disadvantaged teenagers to move forward in life. And that was just literally the turning point, was the mum encouraging a positive activity that met that need, so that she wouldn't do a negative activity that met the need. Um, Sounds fun to me. It's very hard not to keep reading scientific papers. I don't know. The payment's been taken, so it should be dispatched. I think it's. I went for the um, normal kind of speed postage, I think. So I think it was like a week or something. You'll have to make sure you do your best British accent, though. Yeah, when you're thinking of, like, you know, if you were going to do different plants for different addictions or something, it's not likely to be that that would be the way you would look at it. It would be more like you would look at it as things like, could you get a plant that's that little bit more tricky to look after for somebody who really needs to learn to have structure in their lives and to learn to take care of something else, so that their focus is on trying to help something else do well and thrive, rather than all their focus on themselves. So you're having to focus on looking after something, uh, and then something that maybe is harder to kill as a plant, um, for someone who just needs to feel a sense of achievement, maybe with helping something to grow, but doesn't need the challenge element, perhaps. Um, um, Hypnosis is frequently used as an adjunct to CBT. That's where most of the research is around it. Hypnosis is just focusing attention. So, how you would use it as an adjunct to CBT is that you would be using it to focus the attention. So, you'd be using hypnotic techniques to focus that attention. You'd use when you're doing mental rehearsal, rather than just saying, I don't know, maybe uh, just close your eyes and imagine mentally rehearsing that. You perhaps would put a bit more effort into making sure that you're gaining the client's focused attention ready for the mental rehearsal. You would use different hypnotic language pattern techniques, like making sure that you're giving, say, presuppositions and things, so that you're implying that they're going to have success. The best thing is to look at how it's used, like just go and look up the scientific papers to do with, the journal articles or whatever, to do with hypnosis and CBT for that subject, whatever the specific thing is someone presents with. So if someone says um, they're wanting treatment for depression, you would look up what the evidence-based approach to treating depression is, and as part of that, it could be you can use hypnosis for it here, and then you'd follow what the evidence says. But yeah, the main thing is that hypnosis is just focusing attention. So that's the main thing you're doing. So I will probably go as well. It's just gone 10 o'clock. I will be back tomorrow. I don't know what we'll talk about tomorrow, but it won't be the next book yet. So we'll find something to talk about. And thank you all for joining me here. Feel free to give thumbs up and what have you. Feel free to subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. And if you haven't checked out all the other videos in the series of me reading that book, feel free to go and do so. Yeah, if everyone went and I didn't. So yeah, thank you for joining me. I will see you all later.